Hello, and welcome to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. I'm Susie Bolt. This is a space for anyone who's navigating chronic illness. We are here to share real stories, helpful insights, and honest conversations about what it really takes to help yourself heal a tiny bit every day. So whether you're in bed listening, you're on a gentle walk, or you're just needing some company as you go about your day, I'm so glad that you're here. So welcome to everyone watching this recovery interview. I am delighted to be joined today by the wonderful, funny, brilliant Debbie Geraghty. I know, look at that as an intro. Who has been part of the 360 Mind, Body, Soul, Rest, Repair, Recover crew for a while and is now not with us. And I miss her terribly because she's back at work. And so I thought it would be really appropriate to come to Debbie and go, Debbie, why don't we tell us your story? Because I'm really aware that recovery stories are really, really inspirational for people. And so I'm trying to collect as many as we can. So Debbie, why don't we, and everyone always wants to know, so when did it start and what happened? Just tell us the quick outline of what went on for you as it was happening. Off you go.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you for your very kind words. It's gorgeous to be back. I have my fleecy blanket here just to remind me of being in the sessions with my fluffy socks and my fleecy blanket and all the loveliness. So it's really nice to actually just talk to you. Because I miss you too. I miss you all. I really do. When did it happen for me? Gosh, well, I've just passed my 2-year anniversary. We all have COVID anniversaries now, which is odd, isn't it? But just past 2 years, and it was back in mid-March, but 11th of March, I was at a work conference in London. I live in Cornwall, and I was at a work conference in London. And I'm the CEO of a small charity in Plymouth. Went to this work conference, and I don't know if you remember, that was before lockdown. It was before the concept of social distancing. It was before, maybe there was a bit of hand sanitization, but
it was on the horizon, wasn't it?
It was on the horizon. Yeah. There was talk about it.
Yeah.
I was okay and feeling okay about going to a conference with 300 people. 300 people.
Yeah.
So went to that conference, got COVID. Then I remember coming back and feeling these kind of odd symptoms, and then came back and said to my colleagues, I don't think I'll come in today because I've got a bit of a dry cough. I'm not sure what's happening, bit of a sore throat. I won't come in. I'll just work from home. And they went, okay, that's fine. So for the first sort of 4 or 5 days, I was actually working from home, and then things were unfolding around, the potential lockdown, et cetera, et cetera. So I was helping to set up so that the charity could close down, could lock down itself. So I was doing all of that in the first 4 days of having these symptoms. So, so it was fairly mild in those first few days. It was almost, it was like a cold, really. Then we shut down the charity. We put out a public statement. We shut down for other people about a week beforehand because we work with a lot of vulnerable people. So it felt important for us to do that. So that was put to one side. And then I think it was around day 6 of COVID, I just started feeling as if it was like a flu. It just kind of hit me and it got worse. And I thought, so I said to my colleagues, I think I'm going to just be off sick. So I was off sick. And then I was in bed for a few days, and then I started getting even more symptoms, all the gastrointestinal type issues, and just started feeling really grim. And then I remember I think it was day 10, I lost my sense of smell. And it was really weird actually to think of it, but I put it on Facebook. I said, the oddest thing has happened. I seem to not be able to smell anything. What an odd thing. This is back in the days when nobody had even heard of this, and I found myself, I was like eating soup with 5 cloves of garlic. And I was like, nah, needs more garlic. What's going on here? And then I was like inhaling bleach and thinking, why can't I smell this? And it was the most discombobulating symptom of that initial COVID infection. And I remember putting it on Facebook, saying, has anyone heard of this? And somebody said, I've heard somebody in America lost their sense of smell.
One person.
I think it's a thing. And then, of course, it was a thing. It was a thing. But back then, it wasn't a thing. And I think it's so kind of indicative of what it's been like during this whole thing, that we have lived a reality that has happened that other people have had to catch up with down the line, you know? So anyway, that was the sense of smell, then the fatigue and everything else that came with it. That in that initial COVID infection, there was a few times where I feel really ill. I feel really ill, actually, really quite worried. But I wasn't quite sure what to do. I was living alone. I still am living alone. And I remember phoning up NHS director or something, saying, "I think I'm going to die." Or worse to that effect, feeling quite worried about it. And they were pretty much saying, unless your lips are blue, don't come and see us. There was no testing. So it was a very, very different scenario to catching COVID nowadays. People are so blasé sort of almost about it. It's quite odd, isn't it, looking back? So anyway, after about 15, 16 days or something, I was beginning to really pick up, and I thought, fantastic, I don't really have any obvious symptoms. Went back to work, did a big funding bid and everything for work. And then it wasn't actually until about 8 to 10 weeks later, until June. I wasn't quite fully there, but it wasn't until I think it was the 9th of June, I woke up one morning and just had, boom, sudden chest pain, just felt I couldn't move. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this? And then from that point, I thought, I think I might have to speak to a doctor. And I did. I spoke to a doctor and she clinically diagnosed. She said, yep, you've had COVID. I don't think you should be working. Okay. So I said to my colleagues, I think I might take 2 weeks off. 15 months later.
Okay.
And then it just became, as most people with long COVID know, it just became this kind of unfolding of these new symptoms. There was things like suddenly I was having adrenaline rushes, sudden heart palpitations, then things like incredible fatigue, brain fog, more gastrointestinal issues. I couldn't eat things, food intolerances. My ears were going weird, tinnitus, insomnia, all of this different stuff. I lost 3 stone in weight over a period of, about a year. My mum said, "Oh, but you do look good, Deborah." I was like, "Mom." So there was, there was all this really kind of worrying stuff happening that was almost entirely different from the initial infection. It was just a whole other beast that had appeared. It was just much worse than the initial infection. So then it was just a period of months of then working with my GP to get through lots of different tests to look at. Sorry?
I was just going to say, I'm curious because in June of 2020, it sounded like your doctor had some inkling around what could be going on, as in post-viral, onset of. Because I know quite a lot of people, their GPs were totally dismissing them at that point. And, because no one had enough research, there was no evidence. And I think, so many doctors are waiting for the evidence that this is linked to that. And also there was no test. So a lot of doctors were saying, but we don't know you had COVID because there's no evidence that you had. We don't have a test with a line on it, which is obviously very difficult for the millions of people that were being infected at that point, right? But it sounds like your doctor was on side, and I think that can make a really big difference, can't it? Just tell us a little bit more about your relationship with your doctor.
Yes. Well, me and my doctor, I sent my GP a Christmas card. What can I say? It's sort of, I forgot her birthday. No, but no, I did. I sent her a Christmas card, and that is sort of indicative of how brilliant she was.
Yeah.
I think I learned the hard way about the whole doctor thing because I had chronic fatigue syndrome about 25 years ago. And I went through that whole thing back yonder where I went to a doctor and the doctor's going, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's this, it's that, the sort of what people, term nowadays as gaslighting, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of learned to just say, do you know what? You're not my doctor. It's not the right doctor. I'm going to change my doctor to somebody who's actually going to listen to me. So I learned that back then, that if that person's not going to help me, out of the way, go to somebody that can help me. So I'm quite boundaried. Sort of, I've learned that, to be boundaried in that sort of way. But this doctor, my GP, I mean, I very rarely go to see the GP. So I couldn't even remember my GP's name. I was like, who is my GP? So, but when I spoke to this doctor, she was just fantastic. And the reason she was fantastic was because she listened. She validated. She said, I don't know what this is. We don't know what this is. This is a new condition. But let's find out. Let's see what we need to do. It could be post-viral fatigue. Let's not jump to conclusions. You've obviously had COVID because But she was, what's the word? She had a humility about her lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Which I thought, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
So we just had this extraordinary, what I would call a partnership, a health partnership, where we were able to just work it through together. What do you need from me? She would say. I say, okay, I'm kind of worried about this. What do you think about this? I think the heart thing, what's going on there? What do you think about, what about POTS? All of these different things. And she found that the information I was then able to bring to her, she was then able also to give it to her other patients who were having similar issues. So I think that was really, really key throughout that, particularly through that early stage. So once I'd got all my tests, I'd done all my echocardiograms, my Holter 24-hour things, my ECGs, my, all of that sort of thing. She was fantastic in just saying, right, okay, let's get you a referral for that. And I was always clear about what she could help me with and what she couldn't help me with. I was always clear that I would, in the same way that you would go to the pharmacy to get some Elastoplast, but you wouldn't go to, the vegetable store to get some Elastoplast. You just kind of know what a doctor can and cannot do. And in a way, it's no point in expecting them to be, solving your problems in all the other ways. So I thought, okay, so I've got that sorted from the doctor. What can I then do in other directions to help myself? And of course, that's when I then turned to, sort of other things. But she was great. Dr. Matthews from Portview Surgery in Saltash. Yay, medal. Oscar goes to Dr. Matthews for demonstrating the best of Western medicine.
Wonderful. And I think, there has been some amazing stories of fantastic doctors who have really, really been willing to give their patients the time and the space, which is hard. I know our NHS is so short of time and space. But, a lot of this is so new for everyone. So many patients, I think, weren't given that validation. And it's really, really lovely to hear how important that validation is. Because I think it helps with recovery, if nothing else. If someone, dismisses your symptom set or, and I think it's not happening nearly as much now, but it still does happen. I still hear people saying, oh, my doctor has told me that this is all anxiety. I mean, it's a crushing blow when you're someone who's at the peak of your career, you're fairly smart, you're pretty much, you've been living your life pretty well until this point, and boom, you're in this place that you've no idea how you got there. And then someone says, I think this is pretty much anxiety. Why don't I give you a nice SSRI and you're going to feel a lot better? It's like,
yes, which is what happened to me 25 years ago. So right. I absolutely remember what that felt like. Back then, I was a journalist. I was like, why are you speaking to me like this? I'm not depressed. I know what's happening to me.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. In terms of people's health outcomes, it becomes so key. And even during this time, a really good friend of mine who has long COVID went through the same experience with her GP. And I said, what would it feel like for you to change your GP if you feel that you're not going to get any further with this relationship? And I think she then did that, which was then, sort of helpful. But yes, it's such a big thing. Yeah. And yet, as you say, there's also some fantastic GPs who are in a system that it's, has been really overwhelmed by all of this. So I think when was it Dr. Loon Bin?
Loon Lim. Cardiologist, yeah.
Wonderful cardiologist. I think he he always makes a point of saying, now what should you say to your doctor when you go to your doctor? You say, how are you feeling today, doctor? You're a nice human being. I like you. Let's work on this together. And he's absolutely right. People are just trying to find a way through this. And it's better to work together, I guess.
I think, he really highlights the point. You have to have a two-way relationship with your doctor. Don't just walk in, sit down and go, right, I've got this terrible, and just blurt out.
Fix me.
Right. Be in relationship. This person is also a human being who may be having a bad day and might just want you to acknowledge them as a human being before you offload. Yeah. So, I love that
I end up just counselling my doctor. That's the problem. I say, you're having a heart attack. Well, what are you doing about that? My doctor and I, we cried and laughed together. It was just lovely.
So then tell me, obviously what we're really uncovering here with this is the importance of that relationship. And I think, if we boil it down to the essence, it's about support. And actually, a lot of people need a lot of support, and it's really difficult to get. And even if you've got a great GP, that support is just for brief moments and then you're out on your own again. So tell us about how you've sought support and how that's kind of helped you along the way. So apart from your brilliant doctor, what else have you done to help you with your recovery?
Yeah, the doctor was just part of that sort of huge jigsaw, really. She did put me in touch with an occupational health therapist from the chronic fatigue syndrome type clinics, which then all went on to become a long COVID clinic. I worked with him for about 11 months. He was fantastic in terms of all the pacing stuff to avoid sort of boom and bust and that sort of thing. But aside from that, I'm trying to think when I started joining your group. I think it might have been April. It wasn't until April I was able to do that. So before that, I was just actually in the initial stages of that quite isolating period. I found support networks within very good friends of mine. But also my village where I live in Cornwall, I live in this lovely little village over the river, overlooking the River Tamar. And my neighbours here are just gorgeous. They would just turn up with little thingies of food or whatever. So I became bubbles with my neighbours at the time. And they have just been amazing. They always sort of say it takes a village to look after a person. Well, actually, my village looked after me. And my mum was like, oh, I'm going to hug your village when I come down to see, They were, so much kindness. But also, in that sort of initial stage, I was so, in terms of sensory stimulation and cognitive dysfunction, if you like, it was really hard for me to speak to people, not just because, I was on my own or isolated or anything like that, but just it was exhausting to speak to people. So I actually ended up joining some online communities. And there was one community in particular which was called What Do You See Through Your Window? It was just like a Facebook group, and people were sharing views of their window from all over the world. This was all during lockdown. They just take a picture of what was outside their window and they would share it, and it would be a wee story that they put with it. And of course, I got a lovely view because it's the river. And I just looked out the window the whole time, and I just took pictures and I started posting them on this group. And this group had over 500,000 people, 164 different countries. And I was then contacted by the founder of that group who liked my photographs, and he asked me if I could be one of their sort of featured authors and photographers. They were choosing 14 or something across the world. And I'm like, no, that's lovely. And I said, happy to share, my photographs. And so I did. And it's really weird because my brain at that point, I couldn't really do stuff I couldn't do a spreadsheet. I couldn't do basic kind of, actually, that's true. I actually still can't do a spreadsheet. Shh, don't tell anyone at work. I couldn't work in that sort of side of my brain, but I could write about a cloud or the river. There was something that I could do in terms of I could do photography. I could just take photographs. There was something around the creative side that still was alive and well in that creative kind of conversation I was beginning to have with nature, that nature became my community.
What I love about this is that instead of, and I'm sure you did a bit of this because that's how you ended up finding your way to us, but instead of having all of your focus being on your illness, you allowed yourself to engage with other non-COVID related groups. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people would really benefit from hearing, just you say that, because I think, the amount of people that have joined the big groups, the small groups, the groups that focus on this part of the illness, the groups that take that drug for the illness, and their worlds become totally and utterly dominated by the illness and the symptoms and the micromanagement of it and the hypervigilance around it. And essentially that I have a sense that it prolongs the state because you become so associated into it. And the brain is constantly being triggered into that kind of panic around it. It's almost impossible to leave it behind. So I love what you've done there. You've gone, okay, I'm really poorly, but I'm going to join this photography group. And now my work is so good. I'm being selected as one of the kind of, main contributors, which is amazing because that's just generating another part of the brain to come into kind of play here, which is about moving into that rest repair mode. I'm not stressed when I'm doing this. I'm really relaxed. I'm engaging with joy. And that's what you did there beautifully.
Yes, yes. And I think I have tried to engage with, as you say, joy from that sort of initial stage, because I was part of the long COVID groups and the COVID groups and looking at the symptoms, and I was like, oh my goodness me. And it got to the point there were just like so many symptoms that I just couldn't kind of keep up. It's a bit like when you're in the living room with a child and you've tidied all the toys away, and then the child brings one out, and you're like, okay, well, just make sure when you finish with that, you're going to put it away again. And then the child brings out another one, and then another. You're like, no, could you just put it away? And then the child brings it out. You're like, oh God, forget it. Okay, and then there's toys everywhere, and then you just kind of give up. It was kind of like that. It was like symptoms were appearing from everywhere, and people were talking about it, and I couldn't concentrate on it anymore. And I just thought, I can't keep looking in that direction. I need to go elsewhere. And I was very aware of things like neurobiology and all these sort of things, as you say, about the concept of building neural pathways in terms of joy and looking for joy and beauty. So that Facebook group was just fantastic for that. Also because of community. It was a very beautiful community of kindness and support. So I had these strangers being immensely kind to me. I got lovely messages from like somebody one morning would say, from a kibbutz in Israel, think, Debbie, I'm a bit worried about you. Are you okay? Or somebody in Portugal, or somebody in South Africa, and Australia. And I was like, I'm living on my own in this tiny wee village in Cornwall. And there's these people from all over the world who don't even know me, being nice to me. I mean, how can that not make your heart burst with loveliness? It was just so beautiful. Then as a result of that, I was then approached by an American woman who asked me to join their international essay club. And I was like, oh, what's that? So I kind of went along to this. I said, I'm happy to come along and have a wee look. Went along. And it was this lovely group of people who were writing essays every 2 weeks and then sharing the essay in a group. So I joined the club, and for 2 years of my life, I have been part of that club. And if it wasn't for that group of Americans, I probably wouldn't be here in the same way. They were such a key part of my recovery in the sense of them seeing me, witnessing me, appreciating me, valuing me. They call me Wee Debbie. I'm the youngest person there as well, which I quite like. They're all like retired and, no, not quite. They're all like in their 70s, have all been through amazing things and overcome things. So they're immensely inspiring individuals. But they've been this strand throughout that has reminded me that I was more than long COVID, that I was more than a set of symptoms, that I was this person that could still share and remember my own dignity, regardless of what was happening to me. And that just buoyed me. I mean, on a time when something was feeling dark, one of the women in that club she sent me something like 20 bottles full of lights. 20 bottles full of lights, little twinkly lights you put inside to give me some light, she said. So there was wee things like that people kept doing for me throughout, the whole time. And during that time in that Windows group as well, my lovely neighbour next door was a 96-year-old woman called Thelma. And she was, isolated during COVID as well, as you can imagine. She kept seeing me outside on my deck thing, and I was on a sun lounger, and it looked quite uncomfortable. So she phoned me up. She said, "Debbie, I'm a bit worried about your comfort level on your sun lounger." And I was like, "Right." She says, "I've got, a thing you can lie on. I'd really like you to have it."
Oh,
and I said, "Oh, thank you. That's really sweet." So she gave me this thing, which was green tartan. It was kind of the wrong size, bless her. And it was really thick. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm not sure it fits on my sun lounger, but now Thelma will be looking out the window worried about my comfort levels. So I'm going to have to put this thing out. So I put this thing out and I'll be sitting on it. And it was like being on a kind of multi-story sort of thing. It was quite thick.
great.
I thought, I'm definitely going to do this for Thelma. And I posted this on the Windows group. And people were, we were giggling about it, and it was really nice. And we talked about the kindness. I'd mentioned that Thelma wasn't able to get out. So then people said, "You need to let Thelma, why can't Thelma come out?" Say, "Well, because she doesn't have a ramp." We need to get Thelma a ramp. So this group was like, hashtag free Thelma. Suddenly, there's a fundraising campaign to buy a ramp for Thelma, to free Thelma during COVID. This whole thing just kind of just came from nowhere. So suddenly we'd raised some money, and I said to Thelma, "Thelma, you have become an internet sensation." So she said, "Oh," she says, "it's like Major Tom." Was it Major Tom? Captain Tom.
Well, Captain Tom, yeah.
I said, "Yes, you're like Captain Tom." So we raised money. We started talking about trying to get her out, etc., etc. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, sadly, Thelma died a few months later. Oh. But in the lead up to that, she was having a gorgeous time seeing all of these different messages on this particular group. And for me, it just carried me through in terms of the belief in kindness, the belief in community. And when Thelma died, I put the view from her window on that Facebook page, and there were thousands of people all over the world opening their window in memory of Thelma and saying, "I'm opening my window in, whatever it was." And I was like, oh my goodness, isn't the world good?
Yes. What I love about this story is actually, you had and I say this in my in my fun program coaching group, just lift your eyes from your own situation and see who else you can just touch or care for or offer a little bit of kindness to, because that in itself comes back to us, because they generate a chemical in the body. It's going to release dopamine to make you go, "Oh, I did something good today. I feel good. I cared for someone else." And that's exactly what you've been doing. It wasn't all just you focusing on what can I do to get better? What can I do to get better? You allowed yourself to play and engage with life despite having a long-term chronic illness that meant that you were really, really housebound. And the powerful sort of mental shift that I think, a lot of people struggle with is kind of, when I say to people, you really will benefit from not just staring at the illness so much. Yes. Try and find something else to look at. Try and find something else to be engaged in that's not related to it at all. And it's a really, really big jump for some people to kind of even think that that's possible. And I love what you've managed to do, because it was just really from within the safety and comfort of your own home, or even on the safety and comfort of that nice padded sun lounger that got you. So obviously you did some brilliant stuff to keep yourself engaged and not focused on it. I know you did the rest repair classes. Just tell us, out of all of that kind of program, which were the classes that you attended or watched, and why? Because I think it's nice to hear why people show up for some things and not others.
Sure. I mean, I started sort of being physical. I was doing some sort of gentle walking around sort of maybe November, December time of 2020. So, sort of 6 months into the thing, I was doing gentle walking, but I never really got round to doing real kind of beginning to do a lot more movement until a kind of year and down the line, until kind of April time. I mean, December time, I started doing 2 minutes every day of movement that I could do. So I tried to do dancing. I love dancing. And I tried to do 2 minutes every day of dancing. And my occupational health therapist used to say to me, go and dance with your mum. Because my mum and I both love dancing. And my mum's in Scotland and I'm down here. And so we'd be on a FaceTime call, like a video call or something. I said, Mum, let's dance. My mum's very hard of hearing. So that wasn't easy. So I had the music on very loud my side when I could at that point listen to music, because for months on end I could not listen to anything at all, not even speaking, nothing. So when I could hear this music, I put on a wee bit of gentle salsa music and brought out my inner Shawn Mendes with my mother, and we would sort of dance, across video. So it was a way of connecting through something again that I loved, and also moving my attention from here into my body and becoming much more kind of embodied in a way that I could, even if it was just 2 minutes a day. So I danced to the same track for probably 6 months every single day. Then I came across your sessions. In fact, what led me to you? So I wonder if it was through Jez Medinger. Another one of my medals has to go to the fantastic Jez Medinger, who set up a YouTube channel, who early on in the pandemic started bringing together all the evidence and things of what it might be and the relationship with all these different
he was like our kind of newspaper, wasn't he?
He was our newspaper.
The
fantastic Jez. We were all having niacin flushes and private jokes of having the stack of supplements. Yeah. Everybody knew what it was, etc., etc. He was amazing. He really was fantastic. And then I came across your fantastic group. And it was exactly the same time as I started the Nuffield Health Program, the Nuffield one. So I had your group going alongside the Nuffield group, and they are two very, very different programs, as you well know. And I kept saying to the Nuffield group, no, Nuffield Health, you need to do your program like Susie's program. And there was so much about the Nuffield thing that I personally disagreed with in terms of how it was set up. But they were open to me saying, this is why you shouldn't make me do cardio for 40 minutes, because I have post-exertion malaise. What is post-exertion malaise? It is this.
They were really learning on the job, weren't they?
They were learning on the job, but credit to them, they listened. And I then said that I didn't want to do my build your own sort of exercise sessions. I wanted my yoga to be part of the Nuffield thing. So I integrated your program into the Nuffield 3-month rehabilitation that I was doing. So then I started your program, which was to rest and repair and recover on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings. And it became this kind of fantastic sort of structure in my life. I still remember the time when I could just lift my leg for the first time in my fleecy socks, and Ross said, "Excellent, Debbie." I was like, lifting my leg. Excellent. I can lift my leg. Oh, can lift my leg. It was this sort of major achievement, And I lay on my yoga mat for that whole period of time, for months and months, in your amazing sessions, watching the dust under my sofa. I could see from that particular position. It took me a year to be able to go and clean the dust from under the sofa, I could always just lie and look at the dust and listen to you and your clamshell jokes about hating clamshell position,
Still telling the same jokes, Debbie.
You're still telling the same jokes. But what was brilliant about that was because it was consistent. You did the same exercises all the time, which was amazing because it meant brain fog wise, you could keep up with it. You could track your progress. It was incredibly inclusive as a class. You said hello, and you still say hello to every single person in the room, you know. That didn't happen in other classes in terms of Nuffield, et cetera, et cetera. It was a completely different way of doing it. You and Ross both had a personal experience of long COVID. So people believed you. And also you were full of joy, and you just were full of, you know, like you toddle around in your fleecy socks or something. You would be making jokes, you'd be joking with each other. Humour is so important to get a different perspective, to just take the sting out of how hard it was for everybody to feel so isolated out there. People not understanding, people losing friends, people's families not listening to them, you know, people being upset, the immense of grief that people were feeling around this illness, not to mention having to deal with all the symptoms or not being believed or the shame of it. All of that. When we went to your session, we were in fleecy socks and having a lovely time, and we were having a giggle, and we could raise our legs and say, excellent leg raise, you know? Tremendous impact. It just was, it was the key changer for me in making me feel I could recondition my body, because I was having so many POTS-like symptoms in terms of orthostatic intolerance, all of that. And slowly doing that in a sort of supine position, doing the yoga, I could feel my body strengthening.
You know, I love the fact that you've mentioned the joy and the fun and the laughter and the kindness, because, you know, I knew really early on in my own recovery, oh my God, I need to start having some fun. Otherwise I'm going to go under. And so, you know, when you have firsthand experience, and, you know, I am someone for whom comedy is really important to me. I love laughter. I love making people laugh. And actually, just before lockdown was about to happen, I had my first in maybe 20 years stand-up comedy gig actually booked. I'd done a stand-up comedy course, and
you were such a dark horse, Susie.
I know.
Aren't you?
And I was going to go on stage, and I'd even sold tickets, and, you know, and I had this thing, and then suddenly, oh, it's the 16th of March, guys. Sorry, the venue's just closed. I can't do it. And so I knew when I was at my most unwell and kind of going, what do you need to do to get out of this? You need to have fun, and you need to feel kindness and compassion and stop all of the stress and worry and anxiety. That's a part of it. And we're going to do that bit, but let's not do it all the time. Let's just have a really nice time together. So when we set up the rest repair classes, it was basically to get other people with us. So myself and Ross both had long COVID and were in recovery, but to get other people to just play with and have fun with, and to go, hey, we know it's rubbish, but here's a really funny joke about doing that exercise, because I hate that one.
Yeah.
And it's just grown to be, you know, a sort of really lighthearted, but really welcoming and kind set of people that show up and support each other. And, you know, the group chats, you've been in plenty of them, you know, the group chats is like the highlight of the week, I think.
But it's not lighthearted and laughing about it in a disconnected way. It's absolutely recognizing and acknowledging, do you know what, this is really hard. And it's not like, oh, let's all be positive and not, you know, remember that we're feeling rubbish as well. It's actually you hold that space so well, Susie. I mean, I always recommend you to anybody I come across, including the long COVID clinics, you know. You just hold that space with such humanity, so that people can feel safe to say, I'm really struggling, actually. You know, the amount of times in those group chats where people have been able to say, gosh, this is really hard, and they'd be crying, and then we'd all end up crying because we'd all be helping each other and supporting each other. And there is something so powerful, as you well know, about that form of community and witnessing. For me, it's about being witnessed. And people need to be witnessed where they are. It's not about validation and seeking validation. There's a very big difference but it's about being held and witnessed. And you do that so beautifully. You really do. I think your program should be throughout the whole country, really. But that's me speaking with my CEO head on as well. I'm like, listen, you need to be funded, you need to do this, you need it really has been superb.
There is, I know that there is discussion around, within the NHS around the importance of having ongoing group support for people, because they do realize, it is a really important part of helping people recover from this kind of chronic condition. And, there are long COVID clinics that come to me and kind of go, how are you doing what you're doing? And it's great. And I'm really, involved in being a part of that discussion. Which is why putting videos like this out onto the channel means that, it's not only people that have got long COVID watch this, I know that doctors watch these too, because they're just interested, what is being discussed? What are people learning? What do people want and need? Because you're right, yes, I'm quite lighthearted about it when I talk to people but I know the power is in people really feeling safe. And it's very trauma informed, the way that I teach. So there's absolute permission to just do what feels right for you. At no point do I ever say, oh, let's just do a bit more. And let's just do a bit more than that. So it doesn't matter if if your heart rate's let's just try a bit more for another 10 more seconds. We have zero tolerance to that approach. It's very much about getting people to feel safe in their bodies again. And people choose when they want to move up a level. And that might take them 8 months, or it might take them 3 months. It's entirely in their hands, which I think is phenomenally important, because
it's agency. You give people agency.
Exactly.
You allow them to have that agency, which is so key.
Well, they've gone through so much, and some people have really had quite a traumatic experience. Some people will have PTSD around their journey. And there may even be PTSD in people's past, trauma from the past, stress, relationship challenges, whatever it is, it's all brought into this recovery journey and into the mix that's going on inside each individual. So if I set a prescription for the course to be done in a particular way, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work at all. It has to just be, here we are every week. We have something every day. Just come and do the work, and just gently, 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 you will see progress. And you're in charge. If at any point you want to stop, just stop.
Yeah.
You can take a couple of weeks off if you want to. Don't.
It's entire. You use an inclusive approach. You use a person-centered, responsive, inclusive approach. I think is probably what the evaluators would call it. We use a very similar approach in our music sessions that we do.
Right.
But so I just recognize. So I found myself being professionally very, very fascinated by how you do it and what you're building as a result with that. And I know that a lot of the experts that you're having with the interviews, they all recognize that as well, that you have created something very important here that has all the different sort of elements of healing. I mean, I know on the Facebook page the other day, you were talking about that book, Cured by, is it James Redinger? I read that as well. And it's right, you have all of that within your sessions, all of those really key elements, really. So I think it's fantastic, just absolutely wonderful. You deserve a medal too. You are another one of the medal. And the medal goes to, the Oscar goes to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Debbie, let's just summarize. So if someone was watching this and kind of going, I've been really lost, but what's my next step? What would you say the top 3 things for you have been? And in some ways, we've already talked about it, but let's just make it nice and easy.
I mean, obviously, there are the physical things that, I did, like an anti-inflammatory type diet was absolutely key for me. Almost a ketogenic type diet, then the sort of supplements and everything that went with that. So, all that sort of physical side, but the mindset becomes really important. As you know, I did lots of the mindfulness courses and stuff. I did breathing. I did a foundation in Vedic chanting.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I know. It's like, what's that about? I don't know how I did any of these things, creativity, nature. But for me, it was about recognizing that, I think there's a psychological term talks about the wise witness. There's always a part out here that is not, that sees what's going on for you. They do a lot of that in mindfulness. And I think that part that is not long COVID, because I say, look at me, I'm doing this. That part of you that's really curious and looks down on you, that wise witness becomes so important to not get caught up in these potential kind of spirals downwards that can happen, in the kind of catastrophic type thinking that we can get into, because it's really hard to pull ourselves out of that and to be kind to ourselves and compassionate, and to know what our needs are and to set our boundaries, knowing that some of the most compassionate people in the world are the most boundary people, as the great Brené Brown said. And there's something about acceptance of where you are in any given moment, of being nice to yourself, give yourself a break, and then trusting. Trusting is the most important thing, and having faith in the magic that is your body. Your body knows what it needs to do. Just you need to get out of the way of your body, and to give it the ideal circumstances that it needs, and to have trust and faith in your body, and to have trust and faith in human beings as well. Yes, it's hard, and people have rejected us, and people have waited until the coast is clear, and all of these really painful things. But there's some really lovely things that have happened as well. And something about just soaking that up and remembering that and holding that with you, knowing that you will then go on to give that same loveliness to other people in this lovely kind of circle, which is community.
Well, I think, there's going to be, even just if we're looking at the UK, there's going to be at least 1.5 to 2 million people by the end of probably this coming year, who have more empathy and understanding around long-term chronic health conditions than ever before. Yes. So that in itself as a society, there'll be, I'm hoping, just a little bit more kindness out there, because we really, really do thrive when we experience it, as, we've already heard from you today. Yeah. Debbie, it's been so lovely talking to you, and, really having you highlight, you're not scripted.
I'm not scripted at all. I can't remember anything of my journey.
There we go. But just the need for joy and connection and finding your tribe, and, taking your eyes off the symptoms all the time. I would encourage people to come out of, if you're in a lot of the long COVID groups, come out of lots of them. Just choose 1 or 2 that really serve you, and allow yourself to be engaged with other things, because it will push you forwards on your journey more than reading about the world's stress and symptom set with this really, really difficult journey. So, if hopefully you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, I'm really inspired by Debbie, I would love you to put in the comments, what it is that you're going to do differently, so that we can kind of keep an eye out on how this has kind of landed with the viewers. But Debbie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And it might be worth mentioning that in terms of where I am, I'm now back at work. I don't know if we mentioned that, did we? Did we mention that? I can't even remember. I'm now back at work.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Fantastic.
32 hours a week, 42 hours a week. Oh.
It's amazing.
Can I come back to the sessions instead?
Well, you're so welcome anytime, because it's just, you were always such a valuable member of the group, and we have lots of people who bring value and are not afraid to kind of speak out and offer thoughts and wisdom and advice. And, you were really one of those too. So whenever someone gets better, there's a kind of sadness for me. It's like, oh, we're going to lose you from the group. Okay, bye. But please come back anytime, because, I know it's really inspiring for people to witness someone who's saying, hey, do you know what? I did this program. It really helped me. And now I'm back at work. Wow. Especially for people who are brand new going, are you sure? I just need to look after myself like this and do the breathing and do the mind stuff. And okay, really? It's like, yes, it really, really makes a difference. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure. And I'm sure that those were truly inspired. And I will say farewell for now, but I'm sure we'll hear from you again, Debbie.
Thanks so much.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. If this episode brought you comfort, insight, or even a little spark of hope, I'd love it if you left a review. It really helps more people find this kind of much-needed support. And if you know someone that needs to hear this too, please share it with them. I'm sending love, as always. Look after yourselves.